Hello, friends and hate viewers, and welcome back to a special New Year's Eve edition of What Lies in the Sunday Telegraph, a weekly project by which we read the Sunday Telegraph. Well, I read it, you listen to me read it, and apply the power of critical thinking to Australia's number one selling newspaper. It's not actually New Year's Eve today, I hasten to note. It is the 29th. But it's the closest to New Year's Eve a Sunday is going to fall, and with it the Sunday Telegraph for timing this. Last one of the year. Thank you everyone who has decided to come along to this ride. It's been really heartening that so many hundreds of you like to watch a video of some random dude reading a newspaper and being mean about it. Not that I set out to be mean. I hasten to add there is just much to be mean about in the unbelievably mean-spirited Murdoch publication that is the Sunday Telegraph, Australia's most read newspaper. Most purchased, let's be clear. So the heading, the front page is Scoundrels, Saints and a State on Fire, the 2019 that was with cartoonist Warren Brown. So I would suggest a piece that was put together some weeks ago. And then down the bottom, a little bit of news. Crisis talks to decide fireworks ban. New Year's Eve fireworks around the state have been cancelled, with an 11th hour call to be made on the fate of Sydney Harbour's $6.5 million pyrotechnic show because of the horrendous fire conditions. I mean, I would put it to you that the fireworks in Sydney Harbour are unlikely to cause a bushfire. But anyway, the meetings continue, so we're told. Warren's best of, I'm not going to try and read cartoons to you, but I personally don't think Warren's that funny on his best days and is pretty awful on his worst. Actor Toni Collette, her husband has been in a crash. Australian film and television star Toni Collette has publicly thanked New South Wales Ambulance and Toll Ambulance Rescue for saving her husband's life after a shocking motorbike accident. Her musician husband, Dave Galafassi, had been involved in a life-threatening incident. Apparently he's recovering slowly but well, and we're so lucky to still have him. Good stuff. I'm not quite sure when Toll started owning New South Wales Ambulance Rescue, and I'm not sure what to think about that, but I'm not sure why I find out when Toni Collette has an accident. Oh, her husband has an accident. On celebrity news on page 3, carrying on, Amy Harris says Hollywood heartthrob Zac Efron has survived an extraordinary medical emergency while shooting an upcoming TV series in Papua New Guinea. The 32-year-old high school musical star turned reality TV adventurer was transported from PNG to Australia by a local medevac crew last week after he fell ill to what is believed to be a form of typhoid or similar bacterial infection. Okay. Nothing else is news, apparently. Warren did some cartoons during the year, and some famous people have had some medical emergencies. Non-famous people's medical emergencies are much less interesting, of course. The editor's best, mixed picks. What are the best things in the paper? The Summer Puzzles Special is the best thing in this paper, according to its editor. Buzz has predictions for sport in 2020. That's Phil Rothfield, who was an old man when I was a very young boy, and I don't imagine has become any less old, but he's the voice of sport. Right, the Snitch is offering the Snitchies Awards. Who cracked the best case, who was the dumbest crook, and who was best dressed in the dock? Now we're judging our criminals' fashion sense. Gone are the days when a pair of tracksuits and a singlet would suffice for a court appearance. It's the rise of menswear. Triple O babies, meet the newborns who couldn't wait until mum made it to hospital. It has been a record year for emergency births. The stars who will rock your world next year. Groundbreakers of television, fashion and the arts. Exclusive interview with a man who is Australia's biggest secret gambler. His story will shock you. A guide to the holiday season of kids' movies. Jumanji. And the 2020 sports calendar. All the highlights, all the events. Your sports calendar for 2020. Get it printed onto dead trees and delivered to your doorstep, because it's the only way you're going to get that information. Okay, the continuing capitulation of the Morrison government in the face of demands that volunteer firefighters actually get paid for their crucial work. It's been funny listening to them try and defend the volunteer ethos, which I think means people not asking for reasonable pay conditions and equipment. Anyway, so $6,000 for fire heroes. Volunteer firers will receive up to, there's a caveat and a half, $6,000 each from the federal government, with the tax-free handout going to those who have lost income while fighting bushfires across the state. The compensation will be available to New South Wales Rural Fire Service volunteers who are self-employed or work for small and medium businesses. Each fighter can claim for lost income of up to $300 a day. The payments will not be means tested, but will only start after a minimum of 10 days on duty, with the volunteers able to receive compensation for a maximum of 20 days. This is a start to a move in the right direction, but as firefighting becomes a full-time national disaster management issue, we're going to need to move to have some sort of full-time firefighting force, because the fires are non-stop, and when you're not doing the fires, you're doing the fire mitigation and hazard reduction. Right, town ringed by blazes at Wind's Mercy. A small country town is ringed by bushfires and could be the next one destroyed if the wind changes. This is Capertree. Oh, Capertree near Lithgow. I've been there. Right, from page 1, more on the crisis talks about the fireworks, which is the biggest issue affecting Sydney residents, really, at this time of year. Annika Smethurst, national political editor, has a story headlined, "Our Influencer Ads Are Not a Bum Deal," featuring one of the Telegraph's favourite things, which is, of course, a woman in a bikini. That's the bum of the bum deal. Taxpayers have forked out tens of thousands of dollars for YouTube stars and body positive social media influencers to promote Australia. The Sunday Telegraph can reveal Tourism Australia has recruited 7 European online stars to entice Northern Hemisphere holidaymakers. I mean, the social media consultants come in and say, "Oh, influencers are where it's at," so off they go and give some money to some influencers. It's probably far less than they gave to the consultants who came up with the idea. In another line of work I did, I used to have a few social media influencers try and hit me up for money, and very few of them had accounts that weren't largely populated by fraud. Right, face of an assassin who's been hiding here for decades. Charles Miranda writes, "The face of the man behind Australia's first politically motivated assassination has been revealed for the first time. The computer-generated image of how the assassin would look today, aged in his mid-60s, was put together by witnesses as police and ASIO began to close the net on suspects. Turkish Consul General Sarek Ariak and his bodyguard Engin Sever were leaving the official residence in Dover Heights when 2 assassins on motorbikes rode up and shot them at close range in 1980. Okay, apparently our suspect is moving between Armenian communities in Melbourne and Sydney. Good to see that we're servicing the needs of the Turkish government against the Armenian minority. Not that I am condoning assassination. So there's a 2-page on a Shrek panto. Great. And apparently an Opal law is going to fix the shonks in the building industry. Developers and builders who have been red flagged will not be able to sell high-rise apartments without a new mandatory inspection. Or we could bring in the inspection for all high-rise apartments. There's some crazy thinking for you, isn't it? Hey? And moving on, alcohol safety cheats caught. An undercover sting has uncovered widespread cheating by students sitting a test which ensures bartenders know the dangers of serving drinks to patrons already so drunk they could be in danger. Sydney training provider, the Coffee School, has been fined $7,500 for giving students the answers to the responsible service of alcohol test. Having done quite a few RSA tests in my life, surely it is the job of the training institution to give their students the answers, although I grant you, generally not in answer form to the test, but it seems like a slightly odd one. On the other hand, there's so many shonks in the training market. I mean, it makes you long for the days of the CIT. Sorry, CIT is a Canberra thing. The TAFE, where there's just a government-provided training institution you go to get the appropriate training for your government certificate. No, instead we've got a brave new world of fraudulent training providers. There's a cute picture of a dog. She has only 3 legs and numerous health issues, but she's been saved thanks to the Australian Canine Rescue. Okay, so that's just a cute picture of a dog with an ad for a dog rescue service. The dog is cute, mind you. So there's a story about embedded networks in apartment buildings, whereby you can't change your utility companies because it's all embedded into the thing. Again, I don't believe any of us asked for a brave new world in marketing opportunities for electricity companies. We kind of just liked having a utility, but no one's to be spared of the future, are they? And here's an interesting article about the Bungendore Landscape Supplies Company, which got into the cocaine importation business to the tune of $144 million. They got caught. I strongly suspect that when these small operators try to get into the drug business and get caught, it's because their competitors are ratting them out to the cops, which I don't have a problem with, but then the cops try and pretend, oh, this is all our great intelligence, when all they're doing is really just enforcing one side's monopoly isn't actually so great. Right, new hunks get top soap all in a lather. This is the new stars of Home and Away. I assume someone still watches it, probably people who read the Sunday Telegraph, I guess. A stroke trial could save millions of lives. Rebecca Di Girolamo tells us a world-first trial in Australia could save the lives of millions of people killed each year by one of the deadliest types of stroke. Intercerebral hemorrhage or bleed in the brain accounts for more than 3.3 million deaths globally each year. We think this trial will revolutionise the care. Woman bites cop. There's a variation on a time-honoured newspaper theme. A woman has been charged after she allegedly bit a police officer during a domestic violence-related incident in Sydney's east. This is in Matraville, 10:30 p.m. on Christmas Day. 46-year-old woman had threatened a man 24 with a knife. When officers arrived, arrested the woman. She allegedly bit the arm of a male senior constable and continued to bite the officer as she was taken to a caged truck outside. There's more to that story, isn't there? Decked out in favourite Sunday Telly pink, we have a story: new mothers and an ambulance call taker reveal the fear and joy when birth can't wait and a desperate call is made to 000. Page 14, probably the most important news so far. National Australia Bank is accused of breaking anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing laws over its links to a collapsed $150 million gambling syndicate. The Vlahos Millions, NAB was reckless. Alright, now here's an interesting story. Australia's biggest punter breaks his silence on winning fortunes with algorithms, thousands of bets a second. Australia's biggest punter is not a fan of gambling. The man known in racing circles as Dr. Nick sees himself as an algorithmic trader, not a gambler, who trades hundreds of millions of dollars a year on horses based on statistical analysis, treating racing as just another financial market. He doesn't do it by flashy big bets, instead making his money with lots of small bets. Thousands of computer-generated small wagers every second are possible. The GP-turned-numbers man can only remember one time in his life when he placed a bet outside of his professional punting. It was a slot machine at a Gold Coast casino. The extremely private 61-year-old, because the bookies want to kill him, has managed to keep a low public profile in a high-profile industry for the past 20 years despite wagering millions of dollars every week. I mean, if you can keep wagering the same $10 over and over again with sufficient frequency, that does build up into millions pretty quickly. Right, he's pulled out of the fixed odds market, so he's going into the TABs. That's a bad sign for the TABs, I'd imagine, if he reckons they're better. Someone supports the pink test. Yay. I mean, we can pretend for a minute that cricket's news. As opposed to sport. Olivia Newton-John is a dame. They're very excited by that. 34 demerits at once. A woman has been hit with 34 demerit points in one incident after being stopped while driving in the Blue Mountains. Officers saw the woman using her mobile phone while negotiating a roundabout in the main street of Katoomba around 2 p.m. on Friday. They then spotted that none of her passengers, 3 children and a man, were wearing seatbelts. She was issued with 5 penalty notices in fines and 34 demerit points. There's a quick mention of Eddie Perfect, a very old picture of a very young Eddie Perfect, who has written the theme song for Tourism Australia's latest celebration of the diversity of Australia. Lots of white people and swimmers. Apparently it's been a decade of regret. Apparently human relationships are our biggest priority and source of regret. So the source tells us it's been a sweet and sour year. I think that's a joke about Source. This is political gossip with Annika Smethurst, Linda Somalis and Miranda Wood. The source is expressing their surprise that Scott Morrison's the Prime Minister. Apparently they wouldn't have bet on it. Some weak drink there. Then we have the Snitchies looking back. So Sarah Budge has won the Best Dressed Criminal in New South Wales award from the Snitchies. Sure, she'll be thrilled. Right, why it was a happy Christmas for New South Wales adopted kids. Sue Dunlevy gives us her Gee Whiz pharmaceutical story of the week. More than 1 million Australians are living with cancer, but the death rate has plunged in the past decade through to major medical breakthroughs. Apparently the disease is going to be a chronic illness rather than a death sentence. Certainly, I know a lot more people who are surviving, and that's good. Apparently there's some MDMA out there shaped like Lego blocks, which is super strong. Something to keep your eyes out for. And so we come to sport. So a day late because it's a newspaper trying to cover unfolding events. We have 2 pages on Comanche. Millionaire Jim Cooney has been the millionaire with the fastest boat this year. Good for him. Isn't he lucky to be such a fast millionaire in his fast boat with his fastest crew that he's put together? Yeah. Sydney Hobart, a celebration of Australia's sportiest wealthy people. Isn't it good to have a sport where they can feel like they're participating instead of just having to watch from the sidelines? All right, Ian Chappell, as the old man of cricket, is now saying that the rankings don't compute. He doesn't like what the computers have come up with because the rankings ignore their capabilities in Australian conditions, which is the only thing that matters to Ian Chappell, or any Australian cricket fan, really. World news, right, we're leading with the Russians and their hypersonic missile. It can fly 27 times the speed of sound, as opposed to the ICBMs that have been in conventional use for 60 odd years, 70 years. But sure, I mean, the Russians have issued a media release and we can have a little panic and then our defense contractors will get tons of money. And that's all this is really about. If you're wondering, the issue with hypersonic missiles is that you still need to find your target and you need to control the missile during its flight to hit the target. So just having something that can go super fast isn't actually the hard bit in the equation. It's one of the reasons very few US weapons go out beyond around 100 kilometers, is just the difficulty of acquiring the targeting solution at that distance. So you can have a paper weapon that can fly 300, 400, 500, 1,000 kilometers, but unless you've got something closer, actually figuring out exactly where what you're trying to hit is, it's less useful than it sounds on paper. Meghan and Harry to keep titles. So this is Sussex has failed to strip them of their titles, as Sussex was always doomed to fail on that one. Right, the FBI is now after Prince's friend. The FBI is investigating Prince Andrew's friend and British socialite Ghislaine, I don't actually know how to pronounce that, Maxwell. That's the daughter of Robert Maxwell, one of the strangest and dodgiest men to ever live. She was apparently, allegedly, procuring the women for the Epstein sex ring. I imagine if she rolls over, a lot of people are going to prison, so that'd be good. The stars who had everyone talking in 2019 were the Veronicas, Guy Sebastian, Jennifer Hawkins, Ash Barty, Bindi Irwin, Jessica Mauboy. There's a lot of old reality TV stars on this, aren't there? Dr. Chris Brown, Nick Cummings, woo. Deborah Mailman and Claudia Carvan get a double bill. Someone called Emma Watkins, Asha Keddy sneaks in. Right, our final Peter Credlin for the year. Isn't this exciting? Do you think she's going to say something nice about someone? Peter says paying volunteer fires isn't that simple. Whether it was the heat, the smoke, or an imminent threat, most Australian households would have discussed bushfires and how to deal with them as we gathered together for Christmas. And there wouldn't have been too many relatively young and fit people living in bushfire-prone areas that didn't think of joining their local brigade, or think about how else they might be able to help. Along with ongoing drought, the fact that so many communities are battling fires made for a reflective time at my mum's house, where we appreciated our blessings more than usual and sent our thoughts and prayers. Wouldn't it be great to be the recipient of one of Peter Credlin's thoughts and prayers? Wouldn't that really improve your day when you're out choking on smoke trying to fight a fire? It meant a more modest round of present giving too, as extravagance felt out of kilter with the national mood. Well, yeah, imagine you get a crap present from Peter at Christmas because she's decided to stay in kilter with the national mood. Here you go. Talking to others, we weren't alone, because that's the Australian spirit, or at least, I think it still is. If only people could be more like they were in the past. Peter says paying fires is not a decision we should rush, and here's why. Paying volunteers will change what they do and how they do it, forever. A person who fronts their local fire brigade to sign up with no other motive than community spirit is different than someone who sees it as a second job. There is the issue that volunteerism requires a lot of free time and frankly is more likely to attract wealthy people, and I think that's what's driving this. Simply because if you're working two jobs to pay the rent, it's utterly impossible to join your local RFS. And I can't remember ever having a job where I would have been able to take the free time available, and I think a lot of people who aren't very wealthy or self-employed fall into that category. Anyway, that's enough of Peter's rubbish. Hang on. Thumbs up every Australian who volunteers to help someone else. Volunteers are good, and people who don't have the time to volunteer are bad because they're poor. All right, a thumbs down to Extinction Rebellion, Get Up, and the Greens, who want to bleat about climate change and fires rather than accept the science. It's lightning strikes, arson, and unmanaged fuel load, which their backward policies promote, that are responsible, not the numbers in the Paris Agreement. If we could accept the science, that would be good, Peter. We'd love that. Katie Hall has an opinion about small swimmers, which gives us an opportunity to put a very scantily clad Temi Hembrow, it does appear to be wearing a few pieces of fairy floss, not fairy floss, tooth floss. Piers Ackerman says, "'Tis the season to be silly, but can we please not pretend that cats can be dogs?" I'm suspecting some transphobia is coming. Let's see. Let 2020 be the year the world turns on fake news and politically correct falsehoods embraced by the so-called woke generation. Those kids, those pesky kids. It shouldn't be too hard, though, that they are very, very noisy. These aren't really that many of them. Okay, let's try again. I don't think this sentence is good. It shouldn't be too hard, full stop. Though they are very, very noisy, there aren't really that many of them, as the elections of Donald Trump, Scott Morrison and Boris Johnson demonstrate. But there are people in the media who see their role as being at the cutting edge of extremist progressive thinking. Extremist progressive, just wanting to treat people decently. The readily offended would take huge offence because their views would not be presented first on the ABC's flagship programs, be they Q&A or on Radio National. Don't know how many of Generation Woke are listening to Radio National. The LGBTQIXYZ plus people would not find themselves sharing prime positions on the news list with the Greens and the climate change cultists. This is a lot of angry old men shouting at the clouds. It's just very angry that the ABC doesn't share his views, or everyone at the ABC doesn't share his views. Yeah, here's some transphobia. Percentage of births were to individuals who identified as men. And he's talking about what makes a naturally born woman, genetic abilities. Yeah, there's a big load of transphobia out of Piers being published. Why is it any of his business how someone who's given birth chooses to identify? Certainly not of mine. Walk a mile in their shoes before you judge them, Piers. Claire Harvey is writing about her salon appointments and her blow dries. Right, the Telegraph is complaining about Australia's stringent rules about adoption. The ones that protect against children being stolen from their parents. But no, there's a bunch of entitled middle-class people who demand babies, and protecting children from being stolen from their parents is less important than their feelings. Now, there's an apology hidden on the letters page to Karl Stefanovic. On November 10, 2019, the Sunday Telegraph published 2 articles about Nine's Today Show host Karl Stefanovic. The articles included the claim that Nine intended to penalise Mr. Stefanovic $1 million for breaching the standards expected of him. We accept this figure is incorrect. Mr. Stefanovic still has a year to run on his current contract with Nine, and its terms remain unaltered. We apologise to Mr. Stefanovic. Mr. Stefanovic has agreed to discontinue his defamation proceedings in the Federal Court of Australia on terms confidential between the parties. Particularly terse. So there's a new version of Little Women out. It gets 4 stars. Always does. There's a new Guy Ritchie movie called The Gentleman. It's got Colin Farrell and Matthew McConaughey in it. Gets 4 stars. It's also got Hugh Grant. It's a crime caper. Okay, well, The Gentleman, I'll keep an eye out for that. Sorry We Missed You is Ken Loach, being still the only person who's wanting to talk about social issues in the UK. 4 stars. It's 4 stars all round, except for Spies in Disguise, which is a kids movie. It gets 3. Greatest World War I movie ever made. So War Horse, The Light Horseman, Dawn Patrol, The Trench, Sergeant York, Gallipoli, Lawrence of Arabia. That's an uncontroversial list by Duncan. He also gives The Witcher 3.5 stars. I'd give it another half myself. I think it's worth watching. I think if you enjoy this, you'll like The Witcher. Which is more endorsement of The Witcher than this thing, whatever it is. Video. It's definitely a video. So Angela Mollard notes that if your email inbox is super full, you're you're consuming a lot of electricity. Probably can be generated renewably. Duncan Lay observes pop culture has occurred this year, pretty much despite his efforts. 2 more pages on Little Women. Kerry Parnell notes all the times Little Women has been released. Makes me feel older. I remember selling tickets to the 1994 one. Jomo has me in a state of bliss this New Year's Eve. Forget FOMO, it's all about Jomo. Jomo is the joy of missing out. And it is true, staying home on New Year's Eve and just not getting obliterated or needing to struggle to find transport home. I've got a lot of sympathy for. James Weir, and that's Tom Gleeson won the Gold Logie. That's a frozen pizza if you've ever seen one. Okay, and that is the news. The newspaper complete. Thank you very much for everyone who's joined me this year, and looking forward to 2020, full of getting angry about Peter Credlin and Piers Ackerman and other stuff. And if you do like this, please like, share, subscribe, hit all the buttons, because that helps us go on. My fingers are once again physically dirty, not just metaphorically, from handling the Sunday Telegraph. And on that note, we say goodbye to 2019 in Sunday Telegraph style, or in the Sunday Telegraph style. Hope you've enjoyed it, and or at least you've watched this far, so you're getting something out of it. It will be a new year when we get back to you. Hope we survive it all. We all survive it. I hope we all survive it.